FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Welcome. You are listening to the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz, and today is June 12th, 2019. We're hanging out at my place. Jason Hartman and I, as you know, I'm working with him to help you find turnkey single-family investment properties that put out a return just on cash, somewhere 8 to 10%. Some a little more, some a little less. Anyway, we watched a documentary on the financial crisis today called The Flaw. Not the claw, The Flaw. And, you know, it's a little bit dated now, Jason. You know, we watched this thing, the financial crisis. It's already 12, going on 13 years ago.
Well, depending on how you count, most people will say 10 years. But yes, I agree with you because the mortgage meltdown was the beginning of the financial crisis. So there's really 2 crises here. There's the mortgage meltdown. Then there was the Wall Street crisis that followed it up. And most people didn't know about that side of it. I certainly didn't, but I certainly knew about the mortgage meltdown and predicted it.
Oh, same here. I was in Vegas in 2006, beginning of 2007, and there was a sea of taxi cabs in front of the Bellagio or the Mirage.
This was before Uber and Lyft.
Yeah, right. Now you can't even find a taxi cab in most major cities. It's getting harder and harder, which is a good thing. And every single one of these had a billboard on the roof, every taxi, saying, brand new 3-bedroom, 2-bath townhouse. Didn't even say the price. It said $693 a month or $692. No interest, no income, and interest only mortgage.
Yeah.
And I looked at my partners. One was on either side of me, and I said, the mortgage.
Yeah, it's over.
I said, the real estate boom, bubble, bust, whatever, it's over. And within 6 months, I mean, it all came to pass.
So the thing is, what can we learn from this? And are we at that same point again? We're pretty late in the cycle now. So it begs the question, are we headed for another bubble? And, the answer I say is sort of.
I don't feel it's a bubble like what we had before for several reasons. Because, well, you can get like these virtual no money down mortgages, FHA mortgages. You put down 3.5%, but then the seller pays your closing costs. So you literally put no money down. That is alive and well, but you have to prove your income. You have to have money in the bank, 6 months worth of funds to cover that mortgage.
Yeah.
And
this will not be, the next bubble will not be a real estate crisis like it was before. It's going to be a student loan, a credit card, auto loan. Yeah, these auto title loans. You know what was interesting? I just watched another documentary maybe 2 weeks ago about payday loans, and I really never realized what a scam that was. Wow, that is quite a racket they've got going.
Oh, yeah, 250% a year interest.
Or more. It might be
up to 1,300%.
Yeah, it's insane.
And you know who one of the leading financiers or underwriters of payday loans is?
Who's that?
Harvard University Endowment Fund.
Oh, yes.
They might have gotten out.
Yeah.
They might have gotten out because they were exposed like a year ago.
A lot of these prestigious organizations are doing a lot of immoral financing of things. Socially, they talk about socially conscious investing. We'll call this socially unconscious investing. Yeah.
Socially malicious.
Malicious, that's even better.
I mean, it's predatory in every sense of the word.
Totally.
Because if you need a payday loan, you should not be able to get one.
Yeah.
It's really that simple.
That's a good point.
And, you said to me a long time ago, Jason, we were talking about the fact that you could get somebody arrested for not paying their rent in Little Rock, Arkansas.
Yep.
And you said to me, just because you can do something
doesn't mean you should.
Yeah. And this is a case where I don't care how starved for returns you are. This is like eating the, it's basically using the seed corn, basically you're you're just grinding people down into nothing.
Yeah.
And that's like, in Vegas,
It's
you go there.
disgusting. Yeah, Vegas is disgusting. It's a machine that these casinos just destroy lives. Yeah. Right. One of my favorite quotes from many years ago, I remember hearing it from Earl Nightingale, one of my four great mentors. And Earl Nightingale said, the definition of a gentleman is someone who has the advantage but doesn't take it. Just because you have the advantage doesn't mean you need to take it, right? And there's got to be some humanity in the whole thing. But what was interesting? We were watching this documentary, The Flaw, which was about the financial crisis. And it's amazing. And you said this aptly, and I was thinking it as you said it. They keep showing these graphs and these charts about various things in the financial system. On one axis is the decades, the years going by, and on the other axis is the percentage or the total amount or whatever it is, depending on what they're showing. And when it gets to 1971 specifically, they never seem to mention the reason everything changed so much at that time. Well, it's one of the reasons, but it's certainly a significant one. And they just completely ignored it. I couldn't believe it. Ah!
You know what that's called, Jason?
Yeah.
That's called disconnecting the dots.
Disconnecting the dots, yeah.
Yes.
It's intentional myopia, They ignored that we went off the gold standard. And that's what's so interesting about this. And I didn't know much about what happened in the roaring 20s and the kind of credit that was being extended then. And
same thing.
Yeah.
Same thing. Options.
And so we saw the 50s, what generally is thought of as the most prosperous time in America. I'd say also the 80s. But at each boom cycle, and this was what I kind of extrapolated from this a bit, and I'd see if you agree. At each boom cycle, what triggered the so-called boom, and it wasn't boom for everybody, it's at a time when income inequality or overall net worth inequality, wealth inequality became greater. The distance between the rich and the poor got bigger, and the middle was more hollowed out, and the middle class got smaller. Now, we certainly have that today, right? And what was it? What was the key fundamental item that caused that? It was the expansion of credit, right?
Over-indebtedness. Yeah. We saw the debt to GDP ratio skyrocket every time income inequality gets out of hand. And so then is this a causative effect? Is escalating debt the cause of income inequality? And to a large extent, the answer is yes, because who loans the money? Who owns the loans?
Right.
And it's the 1%. It's that top segment. So the easier they make it for you to satisfy your most base desires, your desire.
Consumerism.
Consumerism, which is in itself should be a four-letter word, because, we should all strive to be producers. Being a producer is the best thing you can be in society for your family, for society, for the well-being of the planet as a whole.
And being a producer, it gives you some sense of pride and self-worth.
Self-esteem.
Being a lazy consumer in the movie Idiocracy, sitting on the couch playing video games, eating potato chips and drinking beer. I mean, there's no pride in that, okay?
Yeah, well, that was the other thing we mentioned.
Well, you can do it once in a while.
Yeah, well.
Little indulgence is okay. But
everything.
I'm not a complete stoic.
Everything in moderation, especially moderation.
Yeah.
But when we were talking about it, and I said, Idiocracy is coming. It's just a matter of time before these people try to water the crops with Gatorade. Yeah. They're going to do it. They're going to do it.
It's not far off. But hey, let's go back to that inequality thing. So one of the elements of why the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, as the old saying goes, is because of what you said. The rich, they're the financiers, right? And if they don't directly finance it, they own stock in the companies that do. They're a part of that economy, right? But they're also the part of the economy that uses debt in a smart way. And so if you think about it, take your typical upper middle class or wealthy person or wealthy family, family, whatever, right? Okay, so what do? They go out and they buy assets. They buy it with long-term, cheap, fixed-rate debt, right? And during the beginning of the expansion of the credit cycle, you see debt very available, right? You can get a lot of debt and you can borrow it cheaply, and that's what causes the expansion. Okay, that's the beginning of the cycle.
That's the cycle.
Right? Yeah.
Build up.
Right. And then on the other side of that, all these asset prices are driven up. Real estate values go up, stock values go up. All the asset inflation goes crazy. And they benefit from that because they buy it and they use debt to buy it. They take advantage of inflation-induced debt destruction. And on the other side, they own the loans. They own the assets or parts of the companies that finance that economy.
Absolutely.
And the poor, they don't participate in either side of that. All they do
is pay interest.
Yeah, they're just in the idiocracy, right?
They're feed cows.
They're consuming and they're just paying interest, and they're usually paying usurious interest rates, right?
They're just like the cows. You drive up through central Florida and you see the cows chewing the cud, getting fatter and then being marched off to slaughter. And that's what's happening with the middle class because they become consumers and, there's a balance. I mean, we're all consumers. We all should strive to be producers. But when you become a complete consumer and you produce nothing, then you become exploited and you become a debt slave. And that's what we've seen here. So the key is to strive not to be a debt slave, to be a producer.
Right. So use good debt, don't use bad debt. And, in taking this back to what does this mean for investors, especially real estate investors, because income property is the most historically proven asset class in the world, we don't pay our own debts. It's a great thing. We outsource that debt to a tenant and we delegate that responsibility to them. We tell them to pay us a little extra every month. Hopefully that's called positive cash flow if you can get it. And that
which
becomes
you can
a very good deal.
On our properties. Yeah. You definitely can.
JasonHartman.com/properties.
Yeah.
Ooh, shameless plug right there.
Hey, don't be so self-promoting here.
Yeah.
But seriously, no, all the benefits are there because you get to take on debts that other people pay for you. And then, people don't always look at it. I know it's on our pro formas, but every month you make a mortgage payment, you're amortizing the loan, and that is, profitability there. Future profitability when you go to refinance or whatever you're going to do with it.
Or sell it and liquidate it.
Sell it.
So that's the ROA. I coined that new one, ROA, return on amortization. Now, amortization, as probably everybody knows, is simply paying a portion of principal and a portion of interest every month, big interest in the beginning, small interest at the end of the loan term, and it flips at about year 17 or so. But amort, that's a derivative of the Latin word, which means to kill the mortgage. That's why you're amortizing the mortgage down. And it would be a pain if you had to do it yourself, but you get your tenants to do it for you. And that's why it's such a great investment. One of the TV shows that I know you like, and I like too, Carrie, is that show Billions.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, listeners, we got any Billions watchers out there? and Carrie saw the last episode of the season, and he's not going to spoil it for us. I have not seen it yet. I got to see it. No spoiler alert. Do not say anything.
The bad guys win. Well, they're all bad guys.
They're all bad guys.
They're all bad guys. Yeah. So that tells you nothing.
Yeah. But if you think about it, look at Bobby Axelrod in Billions, right? Think about the things a guy like that has access to, the ability to take on massive amounts of good quality investment grade debt to go and do things and just expand his reach. This is what it's all about, folks. It's all about leverage. the wealthy mindset is to go into debt to buy assets, acquire assets that produce more income and more wealth, right?
Yes.
And the poverty mentality is to go into debt to buy consumer goods.
Buy a flat screen,
that depreciate,
or an automobile that you can't afford.
Yeah, all this, it's the appearances of wealth versus real wealth. You want to invest in things that produce real wealth. Treat yourself a little bit, of course, along the way, but not too much. Don't overindulge.
Yeah, you're entitled to a reward for your being smart and for proper behavior. Because what is savings? Savings is deferred compensation. Deferred consumption, rather. That's what savings is, where you decide, I'm not going to spend this dollar today because I can get a return on it. And later on down the road, then I'll have more money and I'll be able to spend it there for retirement, sending your kids to college, whatever it is. And, Jason, I was out with a friend, somebody last night. And
I'm wondering who this was.
Yeah,
I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
She will go otherwise nameless. And she's telling me about her son is borrowing. He's going to grad school. He was never an overachiever.
You know what? I got to interrupt you on that one because I think our listeners should consider student loans a new form of consumer debt. It's low quality debt. Don't go into debt over college. So unless you're really sure it's going to pay.
So the tuition is a really fine school in Louisiana. Tuition $60,000 per year.
Welcome to the student debt industrial complex scam.
Yeah, exactly. So he's got to go for at least 2 years to get his master's, MBA, right? And what's he going to get out of it? $120,000 in debt that will take him 30 years to pay off.
And not only
if ever.
He's going to lose that time that he could have been doing some productive work. Do you know what I said to one of my friends that was talking about sending their kid to college? I said, they were talking about, I think, how like my kid really isn't that into school and I don't know what to do with my kid, blah, blah, blah. And I said, look, if your kid took 4 years, I don't have the math on this in front of me. I guess I could pull out my calculator and do it.
Sure.
Okay. So if your kid took 4 years and was able to get a 6-week internship, okay, and a whole bunch of those stacked up one after another. So 4 years is 48 months divided by 6 weeks. Okay, that would be, wait, that's not right. 8? Yeah, 8, right? Okay.
48 months divided by 6 is 8.
I don't even know how to do math anymore without a calculator. And it's a little harder than you think to do all this all on the fly.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Anyway, so they could do a bunch of significant internships. They would meet successful business people. They would make all sorts of connections. They would have real world experience, and it would cost nothing. They'd probably get paid a little bit for it.
And they'd also learn how to get to work in time in the morning, how to properly present themselves in terms of their attire. But better yet, Jason, why don't they just go to trade school and learn how to weld? Welder, first year out, $80,000 to $90,000 a year. They're not going to get that. I don't know what this kid's going to do when he gets out.
Yeah.
But he isn't going to make $80,000 to $90,000 per year. And with overtime, well over 100. And there's benefits with that job.
Yeah.
And it's an honest day's work, if that's what you want to do.
What's funny is this whole myth that the world has been sold about. There's there's the shame in doing blue collar vocational type work, right? Yeah. Think about it. Okay. One of the most famous people in the world did that kind of work. His name is Jesus. He was a carpenter. Yeah, right. Okay? Think about it.
And he was a good one too, I heard.
Yeah, well, it's this whole white collar college thing. Listen, I'm fine with all of that. I spend most of my life in that economy, of course, but I'm just saying that, it's, most people they get these liberal arts degrees and they change their mind about what they're going to do. And they just don't even use them. It's a waste. And they're in debt. They lost all these years of their life, which they could have been more productive in. And if
you're going to go to college and you're not part of the 1% where your parents just write a check every year.
Even if you are, tuition, you're still spending your time.
Yeah, well,
even though it doesn't cost you money.
But if you're going to do it, I like the best way is work, go to night school at a community college, overload your credits. So all of those credits will work for a state school. And then go to a state school,
and
because nobody really cares.
Inexpensively, yeah.
Yeah, nobody really cares where you went to school in the final analysis.
Nowadays, nobody even cares if you went to school.
Yeah, like really.
It used to be that way. I mean, just a few decades ago, if it were the 80s, this would be a completely different conversation. But it's 2019, and it's just nobody cares anymore. Okay.
Hey, well, if we look, when Obama took over the student loan program, nationalized it, there was $140 billion in student loan debt. And that was 10 years ago. There's now $1.5 trillion. So something might be a little wrong with this picture.
I think something's wrong.
Maybe we're misallocating resources that could be best spent buying turnkey single family homes, right, Jason?
Yeah, no question. I mean, think about it. For that $60,000 a year tuition, that could be down payment on 2 properties that'll positive cash flow. So
yeah, you'll make probably, well, look, if it's you put down $60K, you'll make $6,000 a year, 10% cash on cash, anywhere from 4 to 6, maybe a little more depending upon the market. It just makes so much more sense. But obviously, they can't get that money, and then they're going to give him money to live on. So he'll probably be $200,000 in debt for 2 years of questionable value and foregone opportunity cost. That's what we're really talking about. When the
opportunity cost of time, not just the money.
And you can't get that back.
Yeah.
Every other kind of cost can be recovered, but opportunity cost never can, which is why you have to weigh it. But Jason, I always said, look, when you're 65 years old and you want to get a reverse mortgage, which may or may not be a great thing to do, depending on the fees and everything else, but you have to go through counseling. You've got to take online courses.
Yeah.
You can't just go for this thing. Why don't they have that for students? They should
or
be
how
required.
About parenting?
But parents don't understand it either because they probably had their house foreclosed on.
Yeah. No. I'm saying to become a parent. If you want to be a parent.
Well, now we're crossing the line here.
Yeah, we might be crossing the line.
But if you're going to go on welfare, and then maybe it's a good idea, you're not going to be able to provide for the kid, that you should study home economics.
Or maybe drug testing before you can get welfare. Okay, that's another subject.
Yeah, well, we don't need to go there. But
so bringing it back to investors. So what are your clients talking about right now, Kerry? What are they saying to you?
Like my average person that I'm talking to is saying, there's just no returns available. They don't want to get into the stock market because they feel like it's rigged, and it is. They might have done very well in the market, but they're pulling money out because they just are getting nervous because we've had 10 years of increasing stock market prices, and that's like unheard of. We're on our 11th year now, Jason. So they really want tangible asset, and they like the properties of really owning real estate, because just about everybody I know, with exceptions, made their fortune in real estate in this country. That's
in one way or another. And that's the interesting thing. Even, I mentioned this a long time ago, but one of my YEO friends, rich kid, and his father was very successful and, set him up in his company. And he was doing an electronics business, wafers, silicon, right? And I said, I remember we had an event at one of his father's homes in Orange County, California, really expensive home. And I said, how did your father do so well? And he says, the interesting thing about it, he just said this to me one day, the interesting thing about it was the businesses were fine. He had a good business, but he really made his money on all the real estate he was buying with the income from the business,
Yeah. Hey, it's like McDonald's, Yeah. Nobody thinks
biggest
of McDonald's
real estate company in the world.
They don't look at them as that. They look at them as Big Macs, and that's a way to earn a return off the real estate.
That's simply your tenant.
Yeah. You're your own tenant.
Yeah.
But the property itself, it's always key corners. It's prime locations that are going to get the most traffic and generate the largest return. So that, hey, if they want to get out, they want to get rid of 500 locations, someone will snap them up like instantaneously. And, the business is just paying to maintain it and keep it clean, now they've got so many less people working there. I think they'll start shrinking the size of these McDonald's.
Well, because they'll be automated with robotics. Yeah. Well, that's what happens when Bernie Sanders says you got to pay everybody more.
15, the fight for 15.
Yeah. They just got to run toward automation. That's exactly what they do.
All 24 of the dwarfs are in favor of $15 an hour minimum wage.
Are you referring to these Democratic presidential candidates as the dwarfs?
Well, as somebody said to me, remember when you were a kid and you went to the circus and the guys would pull up in a Volkswagen and then they'd start coming out and one after the next, a clown car. Yeah. That's what this election has become. So we don't need to get into politics, but the point is that the fight for 15, you want to see the fight for 15? Go to any McDonald's now. There's no longer cashiers there. They might have one just in case some idiot can't run the kiosk. Yeah, but otherwise, there is nobody, there's not a cashier to be found.
That's what I'm totally noticing is that all these even nicer restaurants, they're all becoming these self-service places where you get your silverware and you go up and you wait in line and you order and then they probably bring it to you, but that's about it. And you're still expected to tip. And who says there's no inflation? The amount of human service is decreasing massively. When I stay at hotels now, they're all understaffed.
Oh, yeah.
It's just you just don't get any staff anymore. These big hotels are being run by a skeleton crew because they can do it and they're going to do it. That's the way it works. So it's interesting though, Carrie, as we were looking at that documentary and we talk a lot about inflation and it's hard to analyze, has our standard of living gotten better or worse?
Oh, it's gotten better.
Yeah. Okay. So then
let me explain
so
why.
Much better, how's their inflation? Tell me about that.
Well, there is inflation, but a lot of it's disguised. But, I grew up in a pretty well-off area in the 60s and 70s.
In New York?
In New Jersey.
New Jersey.
Bedroom community, very affluent suburb of Manhattan. I mean, everybody, 90% of everybody's parents worked in the city.
Okay.
Maybe not 90, but a substantial portion. One of the top suburbs. So in that time, Jason, you're trying to burn my place down here. He's discovered my electric arc lighter, which is probably the best product ever from China.
That seems really cool.
It is cool. It's a limited utility for certain substances to light, though. But anyways, this was a well-off suburb, but we had a black and white TV with rabbit ears. We didn't have cable. We surely didn't even anticipate internet.
Certainly you didn't have all the electronics, but I bet you I know what you did have. You weren't, your house probably had land around it.
Yeah, it was on a half acre.
Okay, see, there you go.
That was what the neighborhood was.
And now everybody's crammed in like rats, you're all stacked.
It depends what part of the country you go to, but like townhouses like we're in and these type of zero lot line developments are much more prevalent than back then.
Because of the asset price inflation.
But I'll tell you what I didn't have, Jason. I did not have an internet-enabled garage door opener. Okay? Anything else you tell me, all the advances of the past 30 years, that is the biggest one. Because what do you do when the damn garage door is left open and you remember you left it open, but you're on a train to Manhattan and you can't do anything about it, and then your house is just open to criminals? I mean, that is the greatest invention in our.
Fair enough. There's a lot of cool electronic conveniences, no question about it. But it is hard to really tell whether we have inflation or not. Certainly, the dog.
It was the dog. Yeah, she thinks so. Evidently,
she moves like a cow.
Yeah,
my dog.
Really.
Yeah. But it is hard to tell. Straight up. But it's definitely there in the asset prices. There's no question about that.
Well, it's there
massively.
It's there on the things that you have to buy. When was the last time your car insurance went down? When was the last time your health insurance went down?
But not just that. There are becoming so many more exclusions and so much less service involved with those policies.
Yeah, well, and there
nobody answers the phone anymore.
Yeah, of course not. You fill out an app. You literally.
It's all DIY.
You do your coverage yourself. Yeah. You pick it out. And hey, that's one thing I just want to say. If you're buying car insurance, always spend the $7 a month more for personal injury protection, PIP it's called, because if you get injured, your health insurance is not going to cover it. So you always have to buy PIP.
Really?
Absolutely.
I thought your health insurance would cover that.
No, your health insurance does not cover you for accidents.
I've had many auto insurance brokers and agents that I've talked to over the years that say, well, you have health insurance, right? And I always say, yeah, well, then you don't need this.
Wrong.
That's what they say.
Wrong.
Yeah.
Because if you get into something, well, yeah, if you like break your arm or something and you say, well, I fell down, then you're covered. But if you were in an auto accident and you got some pretty substantial damage, your health insurance ain't necessarily going to pay it. It's actually the auto insurance or the other party that damages, you're not going to be covered for a bunch of it, is the point. You should always get it. Anyway, we need to wrap up now, but interesting dialogue here, interesting opportunities, because in the midst of all this insanity, there's always opportunities, but opportunity, as I think Confucius said, only comes to a ready mind. That's for sure. Definitely to a ready mind, and be prudent. Stay away from these speculative markets. They are collapsing. We got a little reprieve in interest rates, so they might get a little bit of a breather, but ultimately those markets are just way overpriced and far beyond the point of fundamentals. Stick with the bread and butter properties. That's where you should be investing your money. And amazingly enough, Charles Nenner, who's a total Wall Street guy, he's the king of cycle investing, tracking cycles. Was Goldman Sachs' cycle guy for years. And you just had him on your show, right? He was just on my show the other day, maybe today. And what he said was gold and real estate. He called it small apartments or rentals. So apartments, that's more like a European thing. He lives in Europe. Or the analog to that in the U.S., it would be turnkey single family homes. Sure. It's really, he said, that's going to overperform. One thing we neglected to talk about, I'll just mention real quickly, Jason, is that rates are really down. Oh my God. They're fantastic. Yeah. Bigly. Yes. Bigly. They're down bigly. Yeah. As Scott Adams, the Dilbert creator, would say, and Trump would say. And the prices haven't really responded yet. Yeah. But I think if inflation kicks up, you will obviously see them go up. Anyway, Jason, always great to have you on. Questions, comments, email us. By the way, we're doing a Bitcoin contest here. If you can guess as close as you can the price of Bitcoin on July 20th, which is right by my birthday, and you beat me, my guess is $66.50. If you get closer, I send you a free pre-1965 quarter. All right. Just send the email kl@kerrylutz.com with your prediction. 66.50 is mine. And for anybody that beats me but doesn't win, we'll send you a pre-1965 dime. The quarter's worth a few bucks. Dime's worth a couple bucks. It's a good deal. There you go. Happy investing.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.